As much as I love talking about innovations like the Wendy's Baconator Cheez-Its, today we're talking about advertising campaigns that changed the world last year. Happy Friday, Carnies, and welcome back to the Daily Carnage Show. I'm Shannon, I'm a digital marketing strategist at Carney, and I'm your host. And we have a lot to cover today, so grab your coffee and let's get started. So if you're not familiar, the Cannes Lions International Festival of Creativity is the world's most prestigious celebration of creative excellence in marketing and advertising. And it is Cannes Lions season. The festival kicks off on Monday the 16th and it'll go through Friday the 20th. And out of all of the categories that brands and agencies are competing in, the most coveted is the Dan Whedon Titanium Lions Award, which recognizes those campaigns that pushed the boundaries of creativity in the global advertising industry. The Titanium Lions have been awarded since 2003, and unlike other categories that recognize execution within specific media like TV, print, digital, the Titanium category is about transformative ideas that changed consumer culture, disrupted the status quo, and really set a standard for everything that comes after. You just know it when you see a candidate for this kind of category. And to be considered, entries must have already won or be strong enough to win in other Lions categories. So what we're talking about is a really elite group of projects. And the judging process is super intense and very subjective. There's a jury of top industry leaders, and this year's jury is led by Judy John, the Global Chief Creative Officer of Edelman. This year, there were 187 entries to the category, and 18 pieces have been selected for the Titanium Shortlist. And of course, I had the pleasure of covering many of these campaigns in the Daily Carnage newsletter over the last year. And today, I thought it would be fun if I shared with you my top 8, our very own Carnage Shortlist. I would be so stoked to see any of these 8 win in the category for their contributions to sustainability, gender equality, mental health, and accessibility. Starting with Minefields Honey. So many of these campaigns start with a simple insight, like 53% of Ukraine's economy depends on agricultural exports, but 30% of its land, so 139,000 square kilometers, is contaminated by landmines. And landmines make agricultural activity perilous, or even impossible, which has contributed to $11.2 billion in annual agricultural losses and has displaced thousands of Ukrainian farmers. So, to address this, Saatchi and Saatchi Ukraine worked with Kernel, one of Ukraine's largest agricultural companies, along with Ukraine's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to devise a most elegant solution to this problem. First, they used drones to sow nectar-producing plants on these mined fields, so no direct human contact in these dangerous zones. And then they invited a certain kind of farmer who is undeterred by landmines, honeybees, who are able to safely gather the nectar from all of the planted flowers and transform it into a valuable export.
Unique beehives were designed. One side welcomes bees, the other warns humans to stay away. The hives were placed on safe areas in front of mined fields. And since bees collect honey as far as 2 miles away from the hive, it allowed them to cover huge areas that no one else would be able to use.
The result is Minefields Honey, and it's like poetry in a jar. The packaging on Minefields Honey includes detailed information about Ukraine's mine problem, and these jars were distributed to world leaders, diplomats, even social media influencers, as a powerful way to raise awareness and funds for the cause. Last year, the campaign expanded globally with partnerships in Germany and the US. It's been supported by local honey producers and ad tech NGOs, and profits from Minefields Honey go directly to these communities that can no longer use their fields for agricultural work. It's just such sophisticated problem solving. Addressing a man-made problem with a sustainable solution based on the wisdom of nature is unfortunately not the status quo, but it's clear that it should be moving forward. It's also just incredible efficiency, a solution that's both good for people and honeybees. And not to sound too millennial and at the risk of invoking J.K. Rowling during Pride Month of all months, it does remind me of that one Dumbledore quote.
If you succeed tonight, more than one innocent life may be spared.
Okay, speaking of the poetry of sustainability, this next campaign really exemplifies that. You may remember the iconic Olympic cauldron from the Paris Games. For the first time, the Olympic flame was not a flame. It was instead a technological innovation created by EDF, France's largest electricity provider. The Olympic cauldron was 100% electric. In the campaign by BETC, EDF set out to basically cut Paris's carbon footprint in half. And in an event rich with symbolism, there's no icon quite as powerful as the Olympic flame. So they set out to reinvent it using water mist and LED light. So no flame, no combustion, no fossil fuel. The flame ring was 7 meters in diameter, and it was suspended 60 meters above ground by a helium balloon. Insert footnote about helium, in fact, not being a renewable resource, I know. But 40 high-powered LED spotlights produced the equivalent of 4 million lumens, which illuminated this water vapor, which was created by 200 high-pressure misting nozzles. And the effect was this flame-like cloud, and all of this water was being recycled back to the reflecting pool. To say the least, it was a spectacle. It was elevated nightly until 2 a.m., literally transforming the Paris skyline, and it got 10,000 visitors daily. Cultural symbols have to be flexible, and increasingly, to the modern sensibility, an eternal flame feels wasteful. How can we transform that icon to speak to and soothe the anxiety of scarcity? Mist, recycled water, soft light, buoyancy. Beautiful, artful. No notes. Moving on. Okay, so last year, e.l.f. Beauty launched the So Many Dicks campaign because after building and compiling their own database to examine diversity on American corporate boards, they uncovered a truly absurd data point. There are more men named Richard, Rick, or Dick, so dicks, on public company boards than there are women and minorities. So for this campaign, they worked with the purpose-led agency Oberland, and they manually researched and analyzed the race and gender of over 36,000 board members in the US across 4,429 publicly traded US companies, and found that there are 566 men named Dick, Rick, or Richard on these corporate boards. Meanwhile, the number of Black and Asian women holding those positions just barely surpasses the number of dicks. There are only 283 Hispanic women serving on those boards. There are 19 times more dicks than there are Middle Eastern women on those boards. Only 3 Native American women are represented on those boards. To bring attention to this, they unveiled an out-of-home campaign with digital screens throughout Manhattan's financial district, with impressions in high-traffic hubs like Fulton Street Station and the Oculus. The campaign's main goal is to raise awareness and encourage other companies to help double the rate of women and diverse board members by 2027. And if you're going to all this trouble, it's probably because you walk the walk, and e.l.f., of course, was uniquely positioned to lead this charge. One of its core differentiators being that it is one of just 4 publicly traded US companies with a board that is 2/3 women and 1/3 diverse.
I wish I could tell you that this was hard. It wasn't. All it took was intentionality and putting that intentionality in action, and that's all we're trying to encourage other companies to do.
This is such a good example of starting with a brand differentiator, investing in the research to uncover a data point that is emotionally resonant, and then scaling that into a campaign that is bigger than the brand. And of course, they get major style points for the humor here. I think even the Dicks, Ricks, and Richards were laughing. We have them right where we want them. And in another win for gender equality, AXA, in partnership with Publicis Conseil, has transformed home insurance policies in France.
In France, home insurance is mandatory by law. Such contracts provide emergency relocation when a home becomes uninhabitable in the event of fire or flood. AXA adds these 3 words: and domestic violence.
This is what we're talking about when we say disruptive to the sector and the industry. Because for the first time, victims of domestic violence, which we know to be not exclusively but primarily women and children, will now have access to emergency housing relocation. Meaning that if you are experiencing domestic violence and you have an AXA home insurance policy in France, you can now access assistance similar to what you would be offered in the event of a fire or a flood. This is radical. Domestic violence in France has sharply increased, with reported cases more than doubling from 2016 to 2023. And as we know, the number of victims far exceeds what is reported. And one of the biggest barriers for survivors is the lack of immediate rehousing options, which often forces people to remain in dangerous environments. But an insurance company like AXA is an expert in emergency rehousing. And so they can provide this critical intervention, creating a little bit of time and space for nonprofits to then step in, to then offer more sustainable options. From a marketing perspective, this campaign was extremely successful in increasing brand warmth, which is saying something when we're talking about an insurance company. This is one of those standard setting efforts that is going to change consumer expectations. It has the potential to quite literally make the world a safer place for victims of domestic violence. Those 3 words are some of the most important copywriting I've ever seen. Okay, time to talk about our youths. As you very well know, 95% of 13 to 17-year-olds are on the social medias. And there does seem to be a pretty causative relationship between that stat and the deteriorating mental health of adolescents across the globe. The Australian campaign 36 Months was launched in 2024 by radio host Michael Whipley, along with producer Rob Galuzzo, and they had the pretty lofty goal of raising the minimum social media age from 13 to 16, essentially buying back 36 months of peace and quiet from the barrage of cyberbullying, advertising, and general brain rot on social media for children. It would be the first law of its kind worldwide. The campaign starts small with storytelling and quickly gains the support of parents, influencers, organizers, and politicians.
We invited Australians to join the movement.
We're driving everybody to 36months.com.au to sign the petition.
Over the next 5 months, we kept the issue prominent in public debate through a sustained, proactive media campaign.
Think about the education you can build into that 36 months.
And took the cause to Parliament. Until we were supported by a chorus of unignorable voices.
Thank you for your support.
Well, congrats to you for the campaign.
It's making families feel seen and heard.
We can all work together and the next generation won't suffer the way that the one has now.
Its landmark success comes when Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese publicly supports the move, signaling that the government would back the initiative.
Social media is doing harm to our kids, and I'm calling time on it.
Australian lawmakers have passed a bill,
a world first,
to ban children from using
social media.
We will never get our daughter back, but families across this country will get their kids back.
This is widely regarded as a global blueprint. It flies in the face of capitalist progress, platforms bidding for the advertising attention of children. It creates a new vacuum that we can fill with new infrastructure to support adolescents across school and home life. It is proportionally urgent for what is clearly a life and death matter. And we know it's important because it's made some of the richest people on earth very nervous. So bravo, you have my utmost respect. And while we're on the subject of mental health, another Titanium Lions entrant is Coca-Cola. Their sports drink Powerade introduced the Athlete's Code, which was a pretty groundbreaking contractual provision, which enabled sponsored athletes to take a pause on their sponsorships in order to focus on their mental well-being. Now, usually when an athlete withdraws from their sponsorship obligations due to a mental health crisis, they risk the loss of that partnership. And this is a huge problem because attaching someone's mental health to their livelihood and their performance is, well, it's untenable. It's deeply American, but it's untenable. Yeah, I said it. And Simone Biles showed us this when she withdrew from the Tokyo Olympics. When she rewrote the narrative, she didn't let herself down, she didn't let her team down, and she definitely didn't let her sponsors down. She made a decision that protected her ability to stay in this sport and on this planet. The Athlete's Code was created for Powerade by WPP OpenX and led by Ogilvy, and the creative does a really good job of centering athletes' candid stories about their mental health challenges and revealing that these sponsorships mean a lot more to these athletes than we might assume. I, for one, am loving the contract-based campaigns this year. It just feels more substantial, because it's in the fine print. Okay, now we're headed to Germany. Germany faces a critical organ donation shortage, which is perplexing because 85% of the population supports organ donation, but only 15.3% of Germans have formally registered to be organ donors. This is why.
Most countries automatically list donor status on IDs or driving licenses, but German law requires you to voluntarily opt in.
But there is a card that 86% of Germans do carry, their bank cards. So Mastercard has digitally embedded organ donation registration directly into the cards themselves. Instead of building an entirely new system, they integrated organ donation into an existing system that already had substantial uptake. Now, organ donation registration is as simple as a routine financial transaction. Who better to contribute a frictionless experience than marketers. The Life Donor Card saw an immediate adoption rate of about 50% of targeted users, and the program is still scaling, continuing to increase documented donor consent, improving the public health infrastructure, and yes, positioning Mastercard as a catalyst for social change. And my last pick for a Titanium Lion has to be FCB Chicago. They worked with the Chicago Hearing Society to develop a system called Caption with Intention. They realized that the world of captioning hadn't changed for a really long time, but they could transform the experience of watching media for the deaf and hard of hearing public through the use of animation, color, and variable typography, which allowed captions to express dialogue with emotion and tone, even representing the true pacing.
Captions are not timed with the spoken word.
They don't convey tone or emotion.
And they don't identify who is speaking.
Despite this, captions have remained unchanged since 1971. Until now. Introducing Caption with Intention. A dynamic subtitle design system that transforms the film viewing experience, solving the biggest challenges in accessibility. Synchronization. Caption with Intention uses dynamic text animation, so captions are synchronized precisely as each word is spoken. Intonation. The system brings in varying type sizes, weights, and animation, so you can feel when my voice gets louder or softer. Character identification. Now, colors will distinguish characters.
So deaf people instantly know who's speaking.
And I was delighted to hear that they involved the deaf and hard of hearing communities in the development of this technology, which we know is essential anytime that you're working with accessibility, to finally address some of the long-standing caption limitations. Things as simple as speaker attribution and intonation. Caption with Intention is now open source, and it's available globally for studios and streaming platforms, and it represents a major step forward in inclusive storytelling, benefiting not only viewers that rely on captioning, but storytellers who rely on being understood. I think the thread that unites all 8 of these campaigns is that they represent real progress, no matter the means. These are marketers and strategists stepping in to solve problems that in some ways only they can identify and solve, because we're artful, but also strategic, because we're purpose-driven, but also backed by brands with so many resources, because we're excellent at bringing together subject matter experts with culturally engaged, chronically online generalists. We know what to say, but we also know how to say it, where to say it, when to say it. Candidly, the 2020s haven't made me feel very proud to be in our industry every day. But this is such a good reminder that there is good work being done in every corner of the world. And this is only a fraction of it being recognized on a global stage. I definitely recommend spending time with the entire shortlist of the Cannes Lions Titanium Lion Award category. And if you do, please drop us a line in the Facebook community and let us know what your favorites were. Who's your pick for Grand Prix? I would truly love to know. But now it is finally time for an ad from the past, which begins with a trivia question. Which is the most awarded brand in the Titanium Lions category, with 5 awards, including 2 Grand Prix? If you said Burger King, how the hell did you know that? I didn't know that. Okay, BK. They won in 2019 with help from FCB New York for a campaign called Whopper Detour, which geo-fenced McDonald's locations and offered app users a Whopper for 1 cent. And that is why, I guess, Burger King is the gold standard for creative excellence, vision, courage, and world peace. The end. And that wraps it up this week for the Daily Carnage. Thank you so much for joining me. I'd love it if you rated our show, liked and subscribed on our socials, where you can find us at the Daily Carnage. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the daily newsletter, where we'll be covering all things Cannes Lions next week. Until next time, I'll see you in the inbox. Have a good weekend, Carnies.